Good morning, North Carolinians, and happy primary election day. I'm Karen Brinson Bell, Executive Director of the State Board of Elections. I'm here with Paul Cox, General Counsel to the State Board. Thank you to all members of the press in attendance here and listening on the phone for helping to get accurate information about elections to the public. Thank you also to our American Sign Language and Spanish language interpreters who are here today to ensure all voters can receive this information. And a huge thank you goes out to the thousands of poll workers and county elections staff and directors who are working extremely long hours today to make sure voters can cast their ballots safely and securely. Today is primary election day in North Carolina. This is the last opportunity for registered voters to cast their ballot in this important election. About 2,600 polling places are open statewide until 7:30 p.m. tonight. So where should you go vote today? Voters should go to their assigned voting location to vote today. You can find your assigned voting location and your sample ballot in the voter search tool on the State Board's website, ncsbe.gov. Here's another important reminder. Remember to bring your ID. Voters will be asked to show a photo ID when they check in to vote. Most voters will simply show their driver's license, but there are many other acceptable photo IDs. For more information, including the full list of acceptable IDs, visit bringitnc.com. If a voter cannot show a photo ID, they can still vote by filling out an ID exception form and voting a provisional ballot. So far, the vast majority of North Carolina voters have gotten the message to bring their ID to vote. Between absentee and early voting, about 695,000 voters have cast ballots in this election. Of those who early voted, 216 voters cast provisional ballots for reasons related to photo ID requirement. That means they either filled out an ID exception form or they voted a provisional ballot and agreed to return to the County Board of Election office with their photo ID before the deadline of 5 p.m. March 14th. In other words, only about 3 out of every 10,000 voters had to vote a provisional ballot due to the photo ID requirement. We believe this is a strong sign that the word is getting out that you should bring your ID to vote. Finally, a crucial reminder to absentee voters. If you still want to vote your absentee ballot, your only option today is to drop your ballot off at your County Board of Elections office by 7:30 p.m. It's too late to put that ballot in the mail. It has to arrive at your County Board of Elections office by 7:30 p.m. today. As an alternative, you can simply discard your absentee ballot and vote in person at your assigned voting location today. So how will results get reported? Unofficial election results will be posted as they come in tonight on the State Board's election results dashboard, which is accessible on our website, ncsbe.gov. But remember, elections are not over on election night. Over the next 10 days, bipartisan county boards of elections in all 100 counties count the remaining absentee ballots, research and count provisional ballots, audit the results, and conduct any necessary recounts. For example, every county conducts a sample hand count of ballots in randomly selected Election Day precincts, early voting sites, or the absentee ballots cast in the county. This is to confirm results tabulated by our certified and tested voting equipment. Counties must conduct these hand counts in public. The State Board conducts additional audits to ensure a fair and accurate count. The State Board sent out a press release this morning describing some of these processes in more detail. Finally, I just want to tell all eligible voters in North Carolina that there is still time to make your voice heard in this primary election. So get out there and vote. And with that, we will take your questions. We will start with media in the room, and then we will go to those on the phone. So if anyone in the room has a question, there's a mic at each end if you would go there, and I'll be happy to answer your question for anyone in the room.
Good morning. I'm Josh Schaefer, News and Observer. Have there been any issues with the new system, particularly with IDs needing to be shown at any of the precinct polls, places that you know of in the state?
We have not heard any reports for Election Day in particular for ID issues, and the small number that we indicated, 216 individuals who have voted a provisional ballot during the early voting period, seems to indicate this is a very small situation of voters who did not have an acceptable form of ID.
Good morning, Rusty Jacobs, WUNC. Through early voting and now through the first hours of primary election day, what reports, issues have you heard from your local directors really about concerns over partisan poll observers? And have there been issues? We've heard reports about freer reign around the voting areas, but have any voters actually reported concerns or incidents?
We really haven't heard much from any of the polling places for early voting or this morning about issues with observers that, of any voter complaints or anything of that nature. Brian, do we have anyone on the phone that wants to answer or ask questions?
Reporters on the line, please press 1 to ask a question. We have Patrick Thomas with Spectrum News. Please go ahead, sir, in a second. Sorry, that was my bad. Let's go with Christina Cassidy with the Associated Press.
Hi, good morning. Glad to hear everything is going smoothly so far. I wanted to ask real quick if there have been any myths or disinformation that have surfaced that you've had to address. Thank you. Thanks,
Christina. The only incident that I know of at this point in time that we've been addressing myths and disinformation, unfortunately, a radio host this morning in the western part of the state indicated that the polling sites were closed and that voting would be taking place at the County Board of Elections. That is not the case. All voting sites are open, and going to the county office is not the remedy. They should go to their precinct polling location. We've been in contact with that radio station. They have corrected, and the county elections office has worked with the county emergency management. The RAVE system has sent out notification to the citizens that are subscribed to that service. There's been an announcement put on the county elections website and other county agency websites to make sure that the voters are well aware that the polls are open 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. at their precinct polling location. Is there another question? Okay.
Yes. Let's go with Frederica Scouten with CNN. Frederica, go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks for doing this. Just a quick question. Do you have an updated number of outstanding mail-in ballots? The ballots that could be at risk of not being counted if they're not in by 7:30 today.
On our state board website, ncsbe.gov, on the homepage, it indicates the number of requests that we have received, which, as I recall, was around 49,000 requests, and we've been able to count about 19,000 ballots up until now. That does not indicate that those are the number of outstanding ballots, but that's the number that I can provide at this point. We do often see a pattern of individuals requesting, and then they will choose to vote in person instead and discard that ballot. So I don't want to imply that requests indicate number of outstanding ballots. We will obviously reconcile this once we do our voter history and account for the voting method of the various voters.
Let's go with Amarichi with WITN. Go ahead, you're on.
Hi, thank you again for having this conference. I wanted to know, have there been any issues with security of elections or any steps that are taken so people know elections are secure? Thank you again.
Could you repeat your question? It was a little garbled for me.
Sorry, I was asking about security at the elections. I wanted to know if there's any steps that are being taken to make sure people know that elections are secure, or have there been any issues that you know of so far with the early voting?
Okay. So the question is around security of elections in North Carolina now and the processes that we already have in place. So we do a number of things to secure elections and processes that have been in place, many of them for many years. We begin by first trying to tell our story. Through our hashtag YourVoteCountsNC, we have tried to provide information to the voters about the various processes that we have in place. We have a dedicated web page on ncsbe.gov about our security measures that take place at the state board as well as the 100 county boards of elections. Some of these things include the pre-election testing that we do. This is public, but it is also our method of ensuring that the ballots are properly coded and that the voting equipment is working as intended. We also conduct a mock election to make sure that the entire system is working properly. The equipment is sealed and a chain of custody is in place to ensure proper delivery and proper custody of our equipment during its use at the polling sites. At our polling places, the individuals who are working there have taken an oath in their conduct of elections, and they are bipartisan officials who have been recommended by the political parties in their counties and then appointed by the county board of election members. Additionally, after each election, we conduct a sample hand-to-eye audit. Tomorrow morning, we will randomly select for the counties the early voting site or absentee by mail ballots or the precinct election day sites that they will hand-to-eye count to ensure and check the accuracy of the tabulation equipment. We work hand in hand with our partners at the local, state, and federal level to secure our elections from cyber attacks and cyber incidents. We also do the same to ensure the physical safety of our voting sites. We have very clear guidelines that we have published through our numbered memos about conduct at the polls and what is permitted in the electioneering area, in the buffer zone where only voters and those entering the voting enclosure are allowed to be. Campaigning is not allowed in a buffer zone in North Carolina. And then we provide guidance on how we ensure that a voter is able to freely cast their ballot without interruption or interference, and that it is a secret ballot process in our state. At the end of the night, those very precinct officials will sign off on the results tapes and securely transport those back to the County Board of Elections, where they will continue to track the chain of custody. And we have provisions in place to ensure that we have secure methods for uploading the election results to make sure that they are accurate and to safeguard against any interference from cyber incidents or anything of that nature. We work in close partnership with our law enforcement partners. This includes the North Carolina Sheriff's Association and the North Carolina Chiefs of Police. And we have published a guide to help them in whatever peacekeeping role they may have at a polling location. We do not station law enforcement officials at our voting sites. However, they may be called in by the chief judge of that voting site in order to help with any disruption that may take place. Fortunately, we have not seen that be necessary, and we hope that we still continue to have a peaceful election today and in the months ahead.
I'm not seeing any other callers with their hands up, so I think we are good on this end.
Another question in the room, Brian.
No, and I just one just popped up here too.
Thank you.
Rusty Jacobs again, WUNC. I know that rules were put in place to address the uniformity of the enforcement and implementation of the photo ID. And I was wondering if you or Mr. Cox could talk about, what specifically the rules did to try to ensure that uniformity, and what sense you're getting from the polls today and through early voting that there was a more uniform process, because we did hear some complaints from some advocacy groups about a lack of uniformity.
I actually will let Paul talk about that, because the procedures you're referencing come from the rulemaking that we've done. We've implemented temporary rules which are in effect for this election. The board has considered and put forward permanent rules that are with the rules or about to head before the Rules Review Commission. So those are not in effect for this election. But Paul, do you want to touch on the rules?
So again, Paul Cox, General Counsel for the board. The photo ID requirements are fairly basic, and they're in statute. They're in the law that was passed by the General Assembly. You are going to be asked to show your photo ID when you show up to vote. Most people are going to provide their driver's license, but there's lots of other photo IDs they can provide. What the state board has done is also put forward some rules to make sure that wherever you go and vote, in any of the 2,600 election day sites or any of the 300 early voting sites, that the process is going to be roughly the same. The check-in official is going to ask to see your photo ID, and they're going to look to see that you resemble the photograph on that identification, and that the name is substantially equivalent to what the name is on the poll book, on the registration records. So what the rules do is to make sure that those officials are following the same processes. We believe we've had very good success so far in having the county boards train their poll workers, their chief judges and judges on handling that process, and it's been fairly seamless for the vast majority of voters. Now, of course, we have 2,600 election day sites. We have 300 early voting sites. So you're going to have some instances where you have an incident where there wasn't quite the procedures were followed. We're working through those, and we're making sure that training is getting through to the poll workers. And so far, so good, I would say. We have no reports of significant problems with how this is being implemented, at least in the primary election.
We have one more from online.
Okay.
Efron, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. What portion of the early voting in the Republican primary came from unaffiliated voters? And similarly, in the Democratic primary voting, what portion has been from unaffiliated voters?
While I appreciate that you think I would know those percentages or those numbers off the top of my head, I do not. We do have that information provided in our data section of our State Board website, ncsbe.gov, that can indicate turnout for the Democrats and the Republicans. And as we go through our voter history process, we'll be able to give more information about the ballots that were selected by the unaffiliated voters. You can also reach out to our PIO, Pat Gannon, and he can direct you to that data. Similarly, through the reporter from CNN who asked about the number of outstanding ballots, there is some additional data we can provide if you'll reach out to our PIO, Pat Gannon. Yes, we have another question in the room.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you have a sense yet of how many absentee ballots that have been processed were included one of the ID exception forms, and yeah, I guess that's all.
So we do know that 216 individuals had needed to come back with their photo ID and voted a provisional ballot, or they had to complete a ID exception form. So that's where we are right now. I can't separate out which. I don't believe we have that breakdown. Let me double check. No, we don't have that breakdown at this point. But 216 total across the state needed to either bring an ID by March 14th or chose to complete an exception form. Brian, do you have any other questions? I don't see any other questions in the room.
I do not see any other questions online.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all being here today, and we're very excited that we are having a smooth primary election day, and we will keep you informed as the day goes on. So, thank you.